I never expected a Tuesday afternoon at the repair shop to feel like the start of a story I'd never be able to tell without stumbling over my own words. The title of it, I Was Caught in My Cousin's Arms and Never Wanted to Escape, sounds ridiculous when I say it in my head, like the sort of thing you'd laugh off. But the moment it happened, there was nothing funny about it. The shop smelled of grease and coffee that had been left on the burner too long. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, flickering now and then, making the whole place feel caught between stillness and collapse. I was behind the counter, hands stained with oil, trying to coax life back into a carburetor that had no interest in living. The bell above the door chimed, and when I looked up, there she was. She wasn't supposed to be here. Or maybe it was just that I'd never pictured her in this place, among wrenches and dust and the crooked calendar of half-dressed models someone thought was funny to hang years ago. My cousin Lena, not cousin, in the clothes we grew up like siblings way. She was older, almost 20 years on me, part of that branch of family you only see at reunions, weddings, funerals. But she carried herself like someone who belonged everywhere, chin slightly lifted, a presence that bent the air around her. "Car trouble?" I asked, though my throat felt drier than the rag in my hand. She smiled in that way of hers that never gave the whole thing away, half amusement, half challenge. "The engine stalls at every red light. Thought maybe you'd know what to do." It should have been a simple exchange: customer, mechanic, problem, solution. But the way her eyes held mine a beat too long made the air between us feel charged, like the hiss before a storm. I looked away first, fiddling with the carburetor that no longer mattered. We talked, or rather, I talked too fast, stumbling over explanations about spark plugs and idle regulators while she listened, arms folded loosely, her expression unreadable. Every so often, her gaze would drop to my hands, smudged black with oil, and I'd feel myself standing too stiff, as though she'd caught me doing something private. When I offered to take a look at her car, she handed me the keys without hesitation, her fingers brushing mine just briefly. That should have been nothing, just metal changing hands. But for some reason, it landed in my chest like a weight, something I couldn't shake. Out by her car, the late afternoon sun made the metal glare white hot. I bent under the hood, pretending to focus while her presence hovered at my shoulder. She didn't crowd me, but she didn't stand far either. I could smell the faint trace of her perfume, clean and sharp, cutting through the grease and heat. It made my pulse misbehave. At one point, I reached for a wrench and dropped it, stupidly, watching it clatter under the chassis. I muttered something, crouching to retrieve it. When I stood, too quickly, my shoulder brushed hers. Neither of us moved away. For half a second, less, maybe, her hand steadied my arm, a reflex. Warm, firm, unthinking. It was nothing. It was everything. She let go, quick, and cleared her throat. "Careful," she said lightly, though her voice carried an undertone I couldn't name. I wanted to answer, but the words refused me. So I nodded, staring at the engine, pretending to study what I already knew. That night, long after she drove away, I could still feel the ghost of her hand on my arm. And I knew, whatever had sparked in that pause, it wasn't going to let me go. I didn't expect to see her again so soon. 2 days later, the bell over the shop door rang, and there she was, Lena, her sunglasses pushed up into her hair, looking like she hadn't slept enough. "Still giving you trouble?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She set her keys on the counter. "It stalled twice on the way here." I almost turned back. Her voice had that steady confidence again, but there was a drag in it this time, like she was holding something back. She leaned against the counter, tapping her fingers absent-mindedly, then stopped when she noticed me watching. I offered to look it over while she waited. She nodded, wordless. The garage was quiet except for the clink of tools. She stayed close, not hovering exactly, but present in a way that kept my awareness taut. I could feel her eyes on me sometimes, and then she'd quickly look away, studying a shelf of old Newells as if they suddenly fascinated her. It wasn't the car that interested me, it was the little details. The way she rubbed her thumb against her palm when she thought no one was looking. The way her laugh slipped out, low and brief, when I made a clumsy joke about bolts having minds of their own. For a moment, It felt easy, like we were both forgetting what bound us. But then she caught herself. Her smile flattened, her arms folded. "You're too young to be stuck in this place," she said, almost to herself. I straightened, wrench in hand. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, her eyes tracing the oil-stained floor. "Nothing. Just, don't waste your years here, that's all." Her tone was casual, but her voice cracked on the last word. That's what I noticed, the faint crack, as if it slipped out without her permission. I didn't answer right away. I just tightened the bolt and listened to the silence stretch thin. When I finally glanced at her, she was watching me again, but not in the way she had before. There was something guarded there, like she wanted to take back what she'd said. "You look tired," I said softly, before I could stop myself. She blinked, caught off guard. A small laugh broke out, quick and self-conscious. "That obvious?" I shrugged. "A little." For a second, the garage felt different. Less like a place where machines were fixed, more like a room where two people were trying not to admit what they were thinking. She reached for the keys when I handed them back, her hand brushing mine again, lighter this time, almost deliberate. Her eyes lifted, holding mine for a heartbeat longer than they should have. And then she whispered, just barely, "Thank you." I knew she meant more than the car, and I knew I wouldn't stop replaying that moment anytime soon. It was late when she came by again. The shop was supposed to be closed, but the rain had started pouring an hour earlier, hammering the tin roof so loud it drowned out the radio. I almost didn't hear her knock. When I opened the door, Lena stood there, damp hair clinging to her temples, jacket pulled tight. "Sorry," she said quickly, almost embarrassed. "I didn't want to drive in this. Thought maybe I could wait it out here." I stepped aside without a word. She slipped in, shaking off the rain, and for a moment the space felt smaller than usual. The smell of wet asphalt clung to her, mixed with whatever perfume she wore. I offered her the only chair by the counter. She sat, crossing her legs, tapping her nails against the wood as if she couldn't stand silence. I busied myself with the coffee pot, even though I knew the brew was hours old. "Don't," she said when I reached for a mug. Her smile was tired. "I don't need you poisoning me." I laughed, maybe too hard, and leaned back against the counter. The rain kept filling the spaces between words. After a while, she spoke again, softer. "You ever feel like you're living someone else's life? Like you took a wrong turn a decade ago, and now you're just stuck with it?" Her eyes didn't meet mine when she asked. She stared at the puddle forming near the door, her voice steady but low. I wanted to tell her yes, that I felt that way almost daily, standing here covered in grease, while the rest of the world moved on. Instead, I swallowed it down, afraid of how close the truth might pull us. "You don't seem stuck," I said carefully. She gave a small laugh, short, humorless. "That's the trick." The storm outside cracked hard, lightning flooding the shop for a second. She flinched slightly, just enough for me to notice, and I moved without thinking, setting my hand over hers on the counter. It was instinct, nothing more. But her hand didn't move away. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Her fingers twitched once, like she might turn her palm up to meet mine, but she didn't. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up, a name I didn't recognize. She snatched it up quickly, pressing it to her chest before silencing it. When her eyes lifted to mine, there was something raw there, something she hadn't meant to show. She began, then stopped. The rain kept coming down. I wanted to ask her to stay. I wanted to tell her I knew what she was holding back. Instead, I just nodded, stepping away, my hands suddenly cold. She lingered a second longer, her lips parting like she might say something, then closed again. And in that unfinished silence, I realized we'd both nearly crossed a line. The rain had stopped by morning, but something hadn't cleared. When she came back a few days later, under the pretense of checking on the car again, it wasn't the weather that pressed on us. It was everything we hadn't said. She lingered near the counter, restless, tapping the edge with her nails, while I tried to fix a part that didn't really need fixing. The shop was too quiet. Even the clock seemed to hesitate before ticking. Finally, she broke it. "We can't keep doing this," she said, though her voice was steady only on the first few words. I didn't look up right away. My hand froze on the wrench, and I forced myself to set it down gently. Doing what? She gave a half smile, half grimace. You know what I mean. I did, but I wanted to hear her say it. She stepped closer, not enough to touch, but enough that I felt the shift in the air. Every time I come here, I tell myself it's just the car, just an excuse. And every time, I don't believe it. Her words landed like small stones, breaking open something I'd been trying to bury. I met her gaze, and the look there was raw, equal parts defiance and fear. You think I don't notice? She continued, her voice lowering. The way you stop talking when I'm too close. The way you look at me like, she cut herself off, pressing her lips together. The silence that followed was brutal. I couldn't stand it. I don't know what we're doing, I admitted, my voice catching. But it doesn't feel. I stopped, searching for a word that wouldn't betray me completely. It doesn't feel like nothing. Her shoulders dropped, as though the weight of that truth had finally been named. She leaned against the counter, arms folded tightly, like she needed to hold herself together. This is wrong, she whispered. But she didn't step back. I moved closer, not touching, but near enough that the space between us felt dangerous. Then why are you still here? She didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked to the door, then back to me. For a moment, we just stared at each other, breathing the same too thick air, trapped in the tension we could no longer pretend wasn't there. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke again. Because I don't know how to leave. The wrench on the counter slipped from my hand, clattering against the floor, but neither of us looked down. The next time I saw her, it wasn't at the shop. I was walking home from the store, a bag of groceries cutting into my fingers, when I noticed her car parked outside a quiet cafe on the corner. Through the window, she sat alone, her hands wrapped around a mug like she needed the heat to hold her together. I hesitated, then pushed the door open. She looked up, startled, then gave me a small, resigned smile. You caught me, she said softly. Didn't know this place was yours, I replied, sliding into the seat across from her without asking. For a while, we just sat in the clatter of cups and low hum of conversation. She looked different here, less guarded, maybe even fragile. Her hair was pulled back loosely, a strand falling near her temple, and she didn't bother pushing it away. You remind me of someone, she said finally, not meeting my eyes. My chest tightened. Who? Her fingers tightened on the mug. My brother. He was younger than me too. He used to sit across from me just like this, telling me about the things he wanted to do, the places he'd see. He never got the chance. The way her voice faltered on the last sentence, it cut deeper than anything she'd ever said to me before. I didn't know if I should ask, but the question slipped out anyway. What happened? She hesitated, staring into her coffee like the answer might dissolve in the steam. Car accident. Years ago. Silence swallowed us both. I could hear the scrape of a chair somewhere behind me, the hiss of the espresso machine. But here at our table, it was just her words echoing. That's why I can't, she stopped, shaking her head as though she'd said too much. Sometimes when I look at you, it feels like he's sitting there again, alive, and it terrifies me. I didn't know what to say. My throat felt tight, my body stiff with the weight of what she had given me. Part of me wanted to reach across the table, but I stayed still, afraid of breaking the fragile honesty between us. I'm not him, I said quietly. Her eyes finally lifted to mine, shining with something that wasn't quite tears, but close. I know. That's the problem. The words landed heavier than anything before, more devastating because they were whispered, almost accidental. She didn't look away, and for a moment, it felt like we were both holding on to something neither of us could carry alone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her at that cafe table, saying the words she probably wished she could take back. For almost a week, we didn't speak. She didn't come by the shop, and I didn't pass the cafe again. It should have been easier that way, but it wasn't. The silence between us had weight, like a closed door that both of us pressed our palms against from opposite sides. When I finally saw her again, it wasn't planned. Evening had settled in, the streets still damp from a brief rain, and she was standing outside the shop, leaning against her car like she'd been waiting. You weren't supposed to be here, I said, setting my bag down. Her eyes flicked toward me, then away. Neither were you. It broke the tension just enough for us both to smile. Small, reluctant, but real. We went inside. The shop smelled faintly of oil and rain, but it was warmer tonight, softer somehow. She perched on the counter like she had before, legs crossed, jacket slipping off her shoulder. I busied myself with nothing, rearranging wrenches that didn't need rearranging. Finally, she spoke. I shouldn't have told you about my brother. I shook my head. I'm glad you did. Her lips pressed together, like she was bracing herself. It's hard to separate things. Harder than I thought it would be. I leaned against the workbench, meeting her eyes. Then don't separate them. Just let it be what it is. For a moment, I thought she might argue. But instead, she exhaled, slow and heavy, as though she'd been carrying that breath for years. We didn't move closer right away. We just let the quiet stretch, not awkward this time, but alive. I noticed the small details again. The way her hand rested palm down on the counter, fingers tense, the faint shadow under her eyes. The way she kept looking at me, then away, then back again. Without thinking too hard, I stepped forward and set my hand lightly over hers. No words, just weight and warmth. Her fingers twitched once, then stilled. And slowly, very slowly, she turned her hand so her palm pressed against mine. We stayed like that. No declarations, no promises, just the simple gravity of two people who had run out of ways to pretend. She whispered, almost to herself, "This can't be right." I swallowed, my throat dry. Maybe not, but it's real. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Instead, she leaned forward, resting her forehead against mine. Eyes closed, breath uneven, as if the closeness itself was the confession neither of us could speak. And in that fragile stillness, we both stopped fighting it. The rain started again outside, soft against the roof. Inside, we didn't move, didn't let go, as though the quiet itself had finally chosen for us. Looking back now, I don't know if there was ever a clear moment where things started. No line we stepped across, no dramatic declaration, no sudden kiss to make it official. It was quieter than that. It was the way silence stopped being unbearable and started feeling like a language only we spoke. When I think of her, it isn't the arguments we never had or the rules we never named. It's the smaller things, the way her hand hesitated before meeting mine, the way she laughed when she forgot to guard herself, the way her eyes lingered as if they weren't supposed to. People like to tell stories about love as if it's fireworks, loud and certain, something you can point at and say, "There, that's when it happened." But with her, it wasn't like that. It was more like a slow tide, one I didn't realize had carried me out until I looked back at the shore and saw how far I'd gone. And it changed me. Before Lena, I thought of love as something you chased, something you confessed with bold words and sweeping gestures. But being with her, being near her, taught me that sometimes love doesn't ask to be named. Sometimes it just wants to be lived quietly, in stolen moments, in the weight of a hand you don't want to let go of. She carried regret with her, I know that. A lifetime of what-ifs, of turns she couldn't undo. And maybe I became one of those too, something she both wanted and feared. But in her presence, I learned that even broken people can hold each other up. Even regret can turn into longing, and longing into something that feels dangerously close to peace. We didn't promise forever. We didn't even promise tomorrow. But we gave each other something real, something I'll carry long after the grease stains fade and the memory of the rainstorms blur. I can't tell you what comes next for us. Maybe it's more of the same. Quiet, unspoken, a thread we both pretend not to tug. Maybe it ends suddenly, the way most things in life do. But I do know this. I'll never forget the moment she leaned her forehead against mine and, without a single word, told me everything I needed to hear. And maybe that's enough. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?